Welcome to Duck Season Somewhere podcast. This episode is brought to you by the following sponsors. For 365 days a year, it's duck season somewhere at Ramsey Russell's GetDucks.com. The world of duck hunting is way bigger than our backyard. The very best duck hunts in Argentina and Mexico are only the beginning. We specialize exclusively in 6 continents worth of proven waterfowl hunting adventures. Whether you're looking for a unicorn species or a fun trigger pulling vacation of epic proportion, we've got the right hunt dialed in. Real duck hunts and authentic experiences for serious duck hunters. As a genuine American duck hunter myself, I know the difference. Founded in 2003, GetDucks.com is not just what we do, it's all we do. I've been there personally many times. Our reputation speaks for itself. Anita and I are personally available to assist before, during, and after your trip because you deserve nothing less. Looking for something closer to home? The next great hunt is closer than you think. Contact proven operators throughout the U.S. and Canada at our U.S. hunt list. Explore worldwide duck hunting at GetDucks.com. All package details, photos, videos, stories, and thousands of client testimonials right there at your fingertips. GetDucks.com. Ball Shot Shell's copper-plated bismuth tin alloy is the good old days again. Steel shots come a long way in the past 30 years, but will never, ever be like good old-fashioned lead. No way. Say goodbye to all the gimmicky, high recoil, compensation, science, and marketing hype, and hello to superior performance. Know your pattern, take ethical shots, make clean kills. That is the boss way. The good old days are now. It really is duck season somewhere for 365 days per year. Duck season somewhere takes me year-round to worldwide destinations where I visit with the most interesting people. I'm your host, Ramsey Russell. Join me here to listen to those conversations.
Boy, you really get to know somebody in a duck blind. Wouldn't y'all agree with that? I really got to know today's guest on an Idaho duck hunt on the Snake River, chasing golden eyes, widgeons. Man, we had an incredible cornfield hunt for mallards. Just a bunch of mutual friends got together. But for introductions, this particular guy shows up to camp with an entire blue ribbon show hog processed into sausages, pork chops, ribs, stuffed loin, and better yet, a couple of bottles of brown water. And I knew he was my kind of people. I've since learned from conversations with him that he was American-made before it became cool again in 2020 COVID. Today's guest is Garrett Walker of Quack Rack. How are you, Garrett?
Man, things are good. Bringing back memories of our trip in Idaho. I sure wish we were there instead of what's going on right now. That's for damn sure.
Boy, ain't that the truth? Tell me, what are you doing in your corner of the world during this 2-month COVID-cation thing we're going through right now? How are you spending your time and days?
Man, I absolutely should write a book on the 4 phases of handling quarantine. And, we all started off kind of a dark discovery trying to figure out what in the world's going on, and there was that quick adaptation to continuing on as best we could. And then phase 2, man, I've gone out and redone my deck. I've painted my office. I've cleaned out the garage twice. I've bought and sold some tools trying to upgrade my garage. And, then I started drinking. Do a little work in the daytime, and once my work got done, it'd be 2 p.m. Well, I'm going to open up a Coors Light, and then I'm tired of that. Fast forward to phase 4, and now I'm back to just grinding it out. I'm trying to come out of this better than I entered it, and a lot of that deals with my health and my wellness, and just trying to bust my ass to stay ahead. You probably feel this yourself in all of our different companies in the waterfowl industry. There's a timeline and there's like a day that I can tell you, pinpoint every single year where I shift from here we go, here comes waterfowl season. And for the average waterfowler, that's September, October, November. But for the guys running companies in the industry, it's now. And I felt that shift this week. You talked about our trip in Idaho, and I look forward to talking about that more. Last time I saw you, we were in Kansas together. But I really felt that shift this week to where it's game time and making sure that all the plans that we have in place are ready to go for this coming fall.
Yeah. A lot of my life is I think of it as driving through the Colorado mountains with a stick shift. First gear, second gear, third gear, fourth gear, it's grinding totally. Have you ever driven through them mountainous terrains? It's just totally gear shifting. And, travel and conventions and clients in travel status, clients buying hunts, just all the different, working on the web page, doing this, doing that. It's always just shifting in gears. And for the last 6 weeks anyway, the cars just have been kind of sitting there and idle. And I found out I needed that. I really, my relationship at home, my relationships abroad, my business, my personal health and sanity and emotional well-being, trying to find a silver lining with this big stick in this boat right now. But I have, and it's just, it's not an easy time. I think every single person I know, and I know every single person I know listening, 'cause I know a lot of them, we work, man, it's what we do. But it's been a good little, I try to find productive use. And like yourself, I went through the phases to where finally I was just, okay, I'd cleaned out and done everything. My house was clean as a hospital ward, my shop, my garage, my backyard. And I've been back in the office just working now and taking care of some real stuff, man. Hey, but you know what? This morning on group text, what I don't have to go look at and entertain me is a wood duck box with some black-bellied whistling ducks in it. That's pretty dang cool, Garrett.
Well, we set up 5 boxes in the backyard, and I question if I'm doing more harm than good, and I'll explain that in a second. But I live on a couple of acres, and we got flooded during Hurricane Harvey, and so I've got a bayou in my backyard here in South Houston, and we got a lot of wood ducks, and so I've put up 5 boxes, and all 5 boxes are active, and all of a sudden the Mexican whistlers are coming in, and it's pretty interesting to watch. You'll have 2 whistlers land on the box, and they'll start kind of pecking the sides, sticking their head in, and they flush the hen, the wood duck out, and then they take it over. And man,
wow,
my boxes with wood ducks, I got 7 to 10 eggs in them, and they're all loaded and packed in tight with feathers. But those whistlers, they just dump eggs. Absolutely dump eggs, 15, 20, 25 of them on top of those. So I don't know what's going to happen. But back to my point of, am I doing more harm than good? I've never seen an actual hatch. And I've got game cameras set up. And so I think I've got boxes that birds are just filling up with eggs and dumping. But who knows? We'll see.
Well, there are some duck species notorious for doing that, for going and sitting, laying eggs in another duck's nest or another bird's nest and letting whoever built the nest raise up their own young. It's called a parasitic nester. I've never heard that about the black-bellied whistling ducks, but I'd be curious to know if you keep up with it, is Mama Wood Duck going to jump out with a bunch of whistling duck babies? I'd be curious to know that.
A good mutual friend of ours, Scott Moody. Scott Moody, he's got a couple of boxes up there in the northeastern part of the country, and his just hatched. It's pretty interesting talking to him this morning. The last 3 years, it's like clockwork. Literally, he's got it down to a science where he knows that when that hen stays the night with him, he knows that next day it's going to happen. And for whatever reason, he's got it clocked down to between 9 to 10:30 a.m. He sees the little chicks, whatever you want, jump out. And he captured a picture, and I shared it with you this morning. And so I'm hoping to capture that. I've got game cameras out, and, we'll see what happens.
I think it's cool. I think it's cool. For most of my life, we never saw black-bellied whistling ducks in Mississippi, but after Hurricane Katrina, and I think it was Rita that hit that same year, a big tropical depression coming in from the Gulf Coast after that, we started seeing they became just a fixture. Black-bellied whistling ducks became a fixture. We have them use our nest boxes over in Warren County, Mississippi. They're throughout the Delta now. Especially this time of year, you'll see black-bellied whistling ducks. They usually leave and go further south, I guess, towards the Gulf Coast, Texas, Mexico. Usually in September, early October, they bug out, and that's just a new phenomenon, man. They seem to be moving inland and taking over the joint, but I did not know they were parasitic nesters. I had never heard that before.
Well, they're all over our golf courses down here, and I guess I should probably shoot one and figure out what they taste like. They might be good. Who knows?
No, they are good. I'll tell you that. I've shot them many times. That's a very good eating duck, and I like them anyway. But Garrett, look, everybody knows Quack Rack, but introduce yourself to everybody. Who is Garrett Walker? Who are you?
So I'm 41 years old, live in Houston, Texas. I've been in the finance and investments business my whole career, and about, I guess, October of 2015 is when we founded Quack Rack. But, you know, I grew up not hunting. And I've heard you, Ramsey, on another podcast talk about the hunting community where they either grew up with it with their grandfather or their dad. And my dad was raised on a cotton field in the panhandle of Texas, in West Texas. And the last place he wants to be is outdoors hunting. He'd rather be on a golf course. And so I was not raised hunting whatsoever. I went to a small school in college in Louisiana. And one of my fraternity brothers, his dad was a member of Diamond Island. And I had never duck hunted in my life. And in 1997, as you know, in that time, in the mid-'90s, that part of the country was on fire. And so my first duck hunt was outside of Vicksburg, Mississippi, in Diamond Island. Diamond Island. And, you know, I didn't have a camo jacket. I didn't have anything. I borrowed my buddies, and I absolutely fell in love with it. And it was so popular that my fraternity brother, he had to make a list at the beginning of the semester, what dates, who's going when. And so I got to go probably 2 or 3 times a year and absolutely fell in love with it. And I'm from Dallas, Texas. And when I graduated, I went straight into grad school and went straight to work. And my family's got a little farm northeast of Dallas in Mount Pleasant. And, we've got some ducks out there, but it's not a trafficking area and not really a flyway up there. But I rented I leased a property in Idaho, Oklahoma. And I used to, by myself, wake up at the farm. And before shooting light, I'd drive about an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes by myself on this lease. And work on it and learn. And, the thing about duck hunting that attracted me is it was so difficult that created a challenge for me. And I wanted to get better and better and better. And if you could have been a fly on the wall watching me at that lease, just miss the first flock of ducks coming in, not even make it to the hunt because I was so ill-equipped to be able to have a successful hunt. And, man, I guess that failure drove me to want to be better in the sport of waterfowling. And, maybe that's where that drive came and how Quack Rack kind of started.
Yeah. What's your, I think we've all been to those phase. I think we've all gone through that stage, ill-equipped or learning curve. And that's the whole, it's not the top of the mountain that matters. It's getting there. You know what I'm saying? It's the climb. That's what I love about the whole experience. Even now, all these years later, I learned something. I go somewhere and I pick up a tip or I pick up a way of doing things or a way I've never seen it or a way I've never seen it done or there's a different, for example, we talk about Idaho. We'll talk about it more in a little bit. All the hunting I've done, I've never been on something like a Snake River. That requires a whole different way of hunting. Mike was equipped. What is your what would you describe as your favorite thing about duck hunting?
To be honest, it's changed over time. At first I just wanted to shoot a couple of mallards and I wanted to do it on my own. And I wanted to, to basically win, if you will. And so when I first started duck hunting, I just wanted to be successful at it. And then as I learned more and as I got better and better and as my skills improved, man, just like you said with Idaho, last time I saw you, we were in Kansas. What drives me right now is I love to go to places I've never been, and I love to experience the environments that I've never experienced before. And I like that challenge of learning different parts of the country. You know, everywhere you go, it works differently. And I always kind of chuckle in my mind because I take, you know, groups of 5 to 10 buddies with me, and we go all over North America each hunting season, capturing content for Quack Rack. And it always amazes me that guys see something different and they're like, well, this isn't going to work. But what happens is it ends up working out because waterfowling, as you know more than anybody, everywhere you go, it works just a little bit different. And what might be your recipe at home isn't the recipe for, let's say, Montana, or to your point, the Snake River. You know, in Mississippi or Texas, we're not identifying Russian olive trees, and we don't know that the widgeon love to eat the Russian olives that, like fruit. And, you know, it just works differently everywhere you go. And so right now, my passion for it is literally, if you follow Quack Rack's Instagram or Facebook, you'll see we do like a big Montana trip in December. And whether it's the Snake River in Idaho or the Missouri River in Montana, the Bighorn, the Yellowstone, navigating those different environments and facing those different challenges and trying to learn the way they do it and the patterns up there. I love that, man. I eat that up. Absolutely.
I do too. I'll share that with you. I agree. You know, you brought back some memories talking about those Russian olives. That was one of the most memorable hunts. There's a lot of memorable points about Idaho. You know, that was the last hunt I can remember traveling with Mike Morgan. But I remember those Russian olives. We got on that bank one afternoon, and all those freaking widgeons were coming in to hit those Russian olives, and that was a real treat. We shoot widgeons over here in the Mississippi Flyway, but it's not a bread and butter duck species. It's just not, man. It's not a man to get up in all those widgeons that day, and I also remember. Go ahead.
I mean, it wasn't 50 of them. It was hundreds of them.
Hundreds of them.
Hundreds. And what I just remembered as you're painting the picture, we're on that steep bank, and that, if you remember that particular year, the Snake River was high. It was probably a foot to 2 feet higher. So the current was just ripping, man. And to set up our decoy spread, do you remember how far off the bank our decoys were? And, 2-3 feet. And what was funny is that was the year of Ramzilla.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember tucking Ramzilla? That Spoonzilla, whatever. We had it tucked right against the bank, and what a fun trip that was to see those widgeon work. And as you mentioned, our good friend Mike Morgan was there with us, and just that's part of what drives me, Ramsey. Back to your question, is that those types of experiences that I'll never hopefully I'll be able to experience again, but just different and new and challenging.
I'm gonna walk a while away. I'm gonna go through some more memories from Idaho, because one of my favorite memories, Mike was off the clock. He was Mike, not Mojo.
Yep.
He was we were all up there with Mike Pline, and we had a guest over from Australia.
Blair.
You'd brought some buddies. One of them was a great camp cook, by the way, and it kept us well fed with that. But then there was the day we went out to a cornfield. It was snowing. And Mike got all excited. Mike Klein got all excited, said, "This is the day. Let's go hit the mallards." And I think Mike Morgan and I both shot a brown duck that morning, and we got scolded. We got scolded for shooting brown ducks with all those greenheads around. We just got caught up in the moment. But what an incredible that was a very, very memorable mallard hunt. It was.
That was the Hagerman Valley off of the Snake River, and we did that podcast. I forget who that podcast was with, but one of the questions was, "What's your favorite environment to hunt in?" And, after a snowy cornfield with mallards in your face, that was that was my new answer,
No doubt. And then the last day, because I wanted to hunt up there. I wanted to scratch it off my life list, but there is a good chance, for shooting golden eyes on the Snake River, even barrows, not a bunch of barrows, but even Barrow's golden eyes are possible. I had not yet shot a Barrow's golden eye. And that was kind of the hook for me. That cinched the deal. I wanted to go up there to hunt, was just get a chance at and we shot lots of golden eyes and had a few shots at Barrow's. But that last day there was a sandbar kind of cut between the river. And we spent the entire day there, and Mike and Blair drove over, disappeared downriver in a boat, and came back with fried chicken and pizza.
Absolutely.
And that's living right.
I think we're still under contract not to say where we were, but I can tell you we were in the state of Oregon. That's about as much as I can tell you. But we literally hunted behind the Walmart on the river right there, and Mike Klein of Toxic Calls goes into the Walmart in his waders, gets a bucket of fried chicken, a case of Diet Right or Mountain Dew, whatever it was, and literally comes down back into the blind with chicken and some cold beverages. Absolutely.
And that's what it was all about. And then break. The last time you and I hunted together was right before Christmas this year up there with Salt Plains Outfitters in Oklahoma. And that was I'll say for a fact that was probably the best, funnest, most memorable mallard shoot I had in 2019. That was a very, very good hunt. But we were all up under the trees. It was a pretty big crowd, rotating in and out, taking turns shooting. And all the while, one of their staff was back under a cottonwood with a big old camp griddle, turning out some good eats. And man, it was cold that morning. It was humid, and just pull back and drop your gun up, go grab a plate of I don't remember what all that was. It was a monster omelet he cooked, is what I remember. A big scramble. That was pretty good stuff, man.
Absolutely. It's always fun when the mallards just keep coming. Oklahoma's kind of struggled the last couple of years. The goose hunting's been great, but the mallards have been somewhat tough. And for whatever reason, Grant's part of the country, he's always able to produce. And what a great trip. Yeah,
it really was. That was a really fun trip. And I had me thinking about, man, maybe I need to own a stretch of creek out in Oklahoma. That was just spectacular.
Yes, sir.
What did Garrett? You said earlier, Quack Rack came along in 2015. How did you come up with that idea? I grew up in Mississippi, and we've always had 4-wheeler racks or some kind of racks. Big steel contractions. First in 4-wheelers, then in the quads that come out. But Quack Rack really and truly was a game changer of sorts. It was lighter, it was more efficient. You can go into depth on that kind of stuff, but how did you come up with that idea? You started duck hunting in college, you got hooked, but then now one of the big brands in duck hunting is Quack Rack. How did you even come up with that idea?
So, like I said earlier, I was born and raised in Dallas, and in 2011, my job and my personal life, my girlfriend at the time, I decided to move down to Houston, and I got married and had a great job opportunity down here. And I joined a hunting club, Thunderbird Hunting Club. And when I first joined, they were full of members, so they let me have like a little junior membership. And, I had to go out there and do a work day, and they had to kind of eyeball me head to toe and see if they wanted me type of deal. They let me have a junior membership. And what was funny is they got to go hunt the manicured ponds and hunt over food, and they threw me out into the marsh to figure it out on my own. And that again, just like my lease in Idaho, it was an area that was an absolute pain in my ass to get to. It was a pain in the ass to get all my gear there. And as I got successful in that marsh, they started to allow me to to hunt on the more manicured properties. And what ended up happening is they hunt in groups of 4, and I was always kind of by myself because everybody at Thunderbird at that time had been a member for 15, 20 years. So everybody had their groups, and I was kind of the new kid. So they ended up literally having guests of the club or the random attorney that wanted to duck hunt that weekend. They'd stick them with me. And so I'd have to meet guys at the local gas station in the morning, and, you know, everybody had their damn lab to bring, and I sometimes have more dogs than we did hunters in the blind, but I ended up having to run these hunts with strangers. And imagine everybody, you know how people love gear in the duck hunting world. Imagine 3 strangers you have to hunt with, and they all have their own decoys. They all have everything. And I drove a Polaris Ranger at the time, and literally it was an absolute mess with everybody's gear either bungeed to the roof or thrown into the bed, and gear falling out, dogs falling out, and just an absolute mess. And so I went to literally on the internet, found a local welder, and I drew a picture, and when he was done laughing at me, wondering what in the world I'm asking him to build, he built one. And from the moment I put the first rack on my Ranger, I went back. I wanted more. And I went through 6 or 7 versions before I had kind of what I wanted. And next thing you know, I'm at the Exxon guiding random clients and random guests with whoever. And I had my mojos organized. I had everybody's blind bags organized. I had all the decoys organized. You know, back then I like, throw out a huge spread. I was packing 15 to 20 dozen decoys just on my rack. And literally one day I was washing my buggy on a Sunday night. That Monday I flew out on a early morning trip, and my wife calls me and she says, the exterminator keeps asking questions about your Ranger that you left in the driveway. He wants to know what that is on the backup. Well, my exterminator turned out to be a hunting guide with Steve Biggers. You hunted with Steve over the years. So I got on the phone with the exterminator, and he saw my version, my rack, and he said, hey, is that what I think it is? And so I walked him through it a little bit. He goes, I want 6 of them, 5 or 6 of them. And it was kind of funny because I had a negotiated price with my welder at the time building them. And I went back and I said, man, I need 5, 6, whatever it was. I need 5 of these things. And you saw his eyes big as saucers. And all of a sudden the price went up, right? So I told my buddy the price that I was paying, and, I didn't need to make money off of him. Just here you go. And I lost my ass on that transaction because I didn't want to go back to him and say, man, it wasn't that price. It's this price. So I just ate it. And, all of a sudden, those guides started at Rocky Creek Retrievers, Rocky Creek Waterfowl, Steve Biggers. Those guys started using the Quack Racks. And where that name came from, I was on the porch of the Thunderbird Hunting Club, and they have a drawing the night before at about 6:30. And they throw out a deck of cards, and high card gets first pick on which pond to hunt off of. And so I pulled up my buggy right in front of everybody, and I had all the decoys hanging, getting ready for the hunt the next morning. And, I'll admit I was a couple beers in to the evening, and some asshole walks up and says, man, what the hell is that thing? And I looked him square in the eye, and I said, that's a Quack Rack. And from that point on, that name had kind of stuck. And so Ramsey, I had no idea or plans or a desire to start a company. I had no experience. I didn't know anything about shipping. I didn't know anything about packaging. I didn't know anything about welding. And if you were to draw a business plan in starting a business, it would go from one level, then you'd assume a little bit of growth, you'd assume a little bit more growth, and it'd kind of be a stair-step approach. And at that time, I didn't even know what was going to happen. I just knew that people were seeing pictures on the internet. My phone was ringing. And so imagine building a product, whatever it is in Houston, for hunters, and you're going to project that, well, okay, if it's popular in Houston, I bet I get an order from Dallas. So I started preparing for the shipment of the product. And man, Ramsey, Salt Lake City, California, upstate New York. I was getting phone calls from all over the country. So I went to my buddy of mine and I said, man, can you build me a website? So I built a website, and it wasn't like, let's just go build 10 and see what happens. For the first 3 years of Quack Rack, I could not keep up manufacturing-wise with the demand. And one of the things that I was worried about is, many people have different ideas on how to run a business. Some people go raise a bunch of money. Some people do it on their own back. And that's the way that I did it. And I always wanted to stay just a little bit in front of the demand, meaning I didn't want to go build and buy all the equipment and have my own shop. And if you build it, they will come mentality. I just etched along and did the best I could to keep up with the inventory demand, because even after the first year, I didn't know how long this was going to stick. And it's amazing managing that risk and growing the small business. What I was nervous about in that first year, it's kind of funny looking back. It's like, man, I got to build $30,000 in racks. That made me nervous. And then you grow to a position of, man, I got to build 50,000, and you kind of grow a callous to that risk. And it's funny looking back at what I was nervous about then, and then you see where Quack Rack is today. And, if I could go back and change the way we did it, I wouldn't change a thing. But we do things a little bit different. What I mean by that, Ramsey, is the way I manufacture is if there's a shortcut, I'll never take it. One of the philosophies that I like to follow in life, there's always two paths. There's an easy way and a hard way. And the one thing that I always respect is taking the hard way. You learn more that way in life. Mm-hmm. And so when you look at a Quack Rack, if I'm going to err on one side of being a product manufacturer, we are going to err on the side of over-engineering. And you know what? If that's my biggest weakness, I'll take that all day long. And so for the Quack Rack, we expanded from the rear racks to the front racks. We now sell a ton of roofs. We sell roof baskets. We've expanded into, you saw in Idaho, the boat racks. The boat racks have taken off. And today you might see on our Instagram, truck racks. And so we've just continued to listen to our clients and what they want us to build. And if you look at my DMs on social media, what's interesting, and I don't necessarily want to jump into this business model, but there's a lot of products in the hunting industry. I call them made from China products. And one of the things that comes up over and over is people don't want me to manufacture or invent something new like the Quack Rack. They want me to just build what's already out there. And they want me to build it in the way that we build things at Quack Rack, because our audience and our followers know that when they buy a Quack Rack, it's a one-time purchase. They're not going to need another. And maybe that's a weakness to my business model, but that is what we're answering right now. And so we've got some new products coming out this year that aren't necessarily reinventing the wheel per se, but it's just a better American-made quality product that you're probably never going to have to buy another one for the rest of your life.
Well, that brings up a couple of questions I've got, but I'll ask one after the other. But so the Orkin man who worked for Steve Biggers, best blue-winged teal hunt on God's earth, period, in discussion, he wants some of them. Now, you just made one for yourself. This guy all of a sudden sees it, says, I'll take 5. And, you come up with a name, Quack Rack, but there's a lot of folks that I know, that I have conversations with around the world that would love to be in the hunting business, the hunting industry, but when did you see, because you weren't doing this, you've got a real job, man, in business and finance, but what snapped or happened, or just that you say, I'm going to make because, to go from a Quack Rack, hey, yes, Quack Rack, and selling 5 of them to all of a sudden $30,000, $50,000, laying out real money. and developing a supply chain in the U.S. to ship them and do things and manufacture them, get them to the consumer. I mean, that's a leap. But what snapped, what happened, what did you see or feel that you said, I want to make this a business?
So at Thunderbird, when guys get done duck hunting, they all grab a beer and there's a bird cleaning station and everybody's tagging and cleaning and doing all that. And I would see and watch people tell each other about how that product, that rack, made their day easier. And, down here in Texas, like other places, it's fun to sit in a blind early season. It works. But later in the season, you better get out of that blind, right? Birds are weary. Birds are educated. They've been shot out of those blinds. And unless you got fresh birds, you need to get your ass out of the blind. And I was starting to see strategically guys getting tent blinds, packing that Quack Rack up, loading it down with everything to go hunt in different parts of these large impoundments and ponds. And people were having more success because in one trip, they could load up everything that they needed, go to a different part that they hadn't been able to get to before, and have success shooting ducks. So when I saw people literally thanking me or commenting that A, it made their life easier, but B, they're able to become a more efficient and effective duck hunter, I said, man, that felt good. That felt good. And I thought to myself, well, let's just keep building these. Let's just keep learning. Back to I love a challenge. Let's see how we can continue to improve and continue to get better. And, it's funny looking back, Ramsey, that, there's certain times of life that aren't easy. But when you look back at them, you're so appreciative that you learn so much. And by starting Quack Rack, it wasn't easy at all. And let me put a visual in your mind. So I've got a job where I have to wear a suit and tie. And I'm traveling around Texas and Louisiana, and I'm busier than busy, and I'm in offices, and I'm doing this. And I hope my employer doesn't hear me say this, but I would literally work all day, and at 4 o'clock, I would take my suit and tie off, and I'd go to a shop. And I would literally, till 10, 11, 12, 1 in the morning, I would light up my own racks. And looking back on that seems crazy. Why was I doing that? But for whatever reason, it was the challenge and seeing the success people were having. And I just wanted to be a part of that. And I wanted to see what would happen. And, trying to start a business perfectly, I did not have everything ready to do that. I was just listening to demand and trying to do the best that I could to make it happen. And it's amazing how it just worked out. We kept growing and growing and growing, and then I would hire more people. And I'll give you an example. And right now is a great time because the oil business is suffering right now. And all the fab shops around Houston, all the fabricators, all the guys with laser cutters and all this, $500,000, $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 equipment. If we were not in an oil and gas downturn when Quack Rack started in 2015, I don't know if it would have ever become a company. And what I mean by that is, man, if you want to, I was talking with a buddy of mine today, and I showed him a picture of the garage that Quack Racks are made out of. He goes, man, that looks like a meth lab. What in the world is where Quack Racks were first built? I had a marathon welder doing them on the weekends on the side. And what's funny is this guy drank a lot of beer. So I would literally bring him cases of Bud Light, and I thought that was a smart thing. Well, what I learned is that while he was welding Quack Racks, he drank all the damn beer. So when I went to go pick him up, I was paying him in cash. He was so drunk he couldn't add up the cash. So he either thought I was tipping him a lot of money or he thought I was shorting him. And I was afraid I was going to get shanked in the side. But I could always tell when I went to pick up those Quack Racks, I would see a big old trash can, and it would be full of Bud Lights. And I'd tell myself, uh-oh, here we go. He's drunk again. But anyway, so back to the oil and gas side of it. So I was pumping out so many racks that I knew that I needed to get to a bigger platform to keep up with demand. And back to trying to match that demand, I remember one of the biggest Polaris dealerships in my first year. One of the biggest Polaris dealerships in the country is owned by a guy who loves hunting ducks. And he called me and he said, I need to place a $50,000 order. Man, the ink wasn't even dry on my LLC paperwork. I didn't even have boxes. And here this guy places a $50,000 order. So I knew that I needed to keep up with that demand. And so literally the oil and gas business is down. I started driving around and knocking on some of the doors of these fabrication shops. And so my next fabrication, he would have never taken me. Absolutely would have never taken me in. But because the oil and gas business was struggling, he wanted to keep his guys employed. So he took me on. And he had gigantic press brakes, all the equipment. And that's when I really transitioned to, instead of building 10, 15, 25 at a time, let's start building 50, 75 at a time. And I was able to scale up. And so you asked the question, how did I get this going? How did I get a business started? It was just the little challenge. I would see a little challenge ahead of me, and then I would have to overcome that. And then the next challenge and the next challenge. And I just kept my head down and my shoes shine and just kept plowing forward. And here we are, this October will be our 5th year in business. And,
wow.
It's been a hell of a journey. And, everything just kind of fell into place.
Well, let's talk about Quack Rack a little bit because since I've had, first the four-wheeler era and, front rack, back racks, and we actually took some conduit and as we started hauling layout blinds or poke boats and stuff or some of the areas we hunt, we built like just little frames, like little rolling cages above these four-wheelers connected to the front and back rack. We could put stuff on top, hang stuff on the back. Then came the Ranger era. And I'm still a 2-seat Ranger, not a quad, just a one bench, 2 people, 3, somebody sits in the middle, Quack Rack guy. And I had a rack when I met you. I had a rack on the back of my truck, but it was the old rack. It was heavy, and when you start loading it down on top of that, all that steel, when you start loading it down on that rack, you're just asking for wear and tear on the machine because these machines aren't engineered for that. But along comes Quack Rack. It's sleek, it's functional. A lot of the design elements you put into it, not to mention the material it's made of, it's in my mind, it's far superior to the old days of doing it. But Garrett, in your words, you talked about over-engineering. Explain to somebody that may not be familiar with Quack Rack, what are some of the design elements? What makes it Quack Rack? What makes it different? What's special about Quack Rack? Go into detail with me.
And so the first rack I built, I wasn't an expert on aluminum versus steel. So the first rack I built, I just went to a warehouse that sold steel, and I built my first rack out of steel, and I had it painted. And after it got rained on a couple times, I noticed it was rusting. So from that moment forward, I said, well, this is obviously not the product that I need. And so from then on, I went to marine grade aluminum. What marine grade aluminum gives you is a longer lasting, almost lifetime lasting, but a longer lasting, lighter product. So when you look at our rear racks, it's funny, you'll see people that have a steel rack and they say, this is my Quack Rack or whatever. And we'll probably get to that in a second, but it's totally not the same because you're going to have, my rear rack weighs about 60 to 65 pounds. If I were to do it in a steel product, you'd be over 100 pounds.
That makes a lot of difference.
Well, when you're driving around in a mud hole, the last thing you want is added weight. And then when you add 10, 12, 15 dozen decoys, 4 guys, 2 dogs, 4 blind bags, 4 shotguns, you're putting a lot of weight on that rig. And so I went directly to marine grade aluminum. And for anybody that knows the price difference between aluminum and steel, that's a perfect example of where I could have taken a shortcut. and I'll never take that shortcut. Our products, one of the things that I take pride in right now is guys that bought them in 2016, 2017. I see them on Instagram. They got the same rack, and they comment that it looks like it did day one. And that's the way that we build things. And, you know, one of the comments that is obvious, if you were to go to my website, the first thing people think is, man, those are expensive. What's funny is you only have to buy it once. And if I look at some of the other products that I've had to buy in waterfowl hunting, you know, we all have that list of things that we probably have to replace, if not every season, but during season. And that $100 every year, or that $200 every year, or I need two $200 products. Next thing you know, if you look at the amount of money you spend on broken spinning wing decoys, waders with holes in it, all those purchases, but one Quack Rack over 5, 10, 15 years, all of a sudden, we're not so expensive. We're just absolutely built right. So 100% marine grade aluminum. It is lightweight. Put a nice powder coating finish on that. All the components that we use are stainless steel. And, you know, one of the hardest things, Ramsey, that you've probably experienced is pricing a product. And being American made and having everything over here, when I go to pricing a product, I didn't say, what's the cheapest I can offer this for? And try and cut corners, which is the way kind of the industry is. And people made fun of me. Nobody's ever going to pay that price. Nobody's ever going to spend our average customer spends $1,000 with us. And so between a front and a rear, it averages out to $1,000 per customer. But the bottom line is that
it's it's $1,000, which is not chump change, but it's going on what's normally a $15,000 or $20,000 machine.
Right.
I mean, so you know, go ahead.
So at the end of the day, you know, we're building products where I am going the opposite of the way most products are developed. I'm coming from the idea of I want to build a quality product first and foremost. This is what it's going to cost, and that's how we price it accordingly. And, you know, I'm not the smartest man in the world. You know, there's different ways to run a business. That's the way that we've kind of run it. And, you know, every fab shop that I've been partnered with, man, you know, we could make it a little bit cheaper if you did this, or we could do that. And man, I'm not here to cut corners. So those racks are absolutely indestructible. They're absolutely indestructible. And when you make a purchase with us for our racks, I don't need you to go buy another one. I want it to last for as long as you're duck hunting, man. I mean, how long have you had your rack, Ramsey?
I have got y'all's first run rack, and I've had it 5 or 6 years.
Yeah. And
you've tried to talk me into upgrading, or and I'm like, why? And see, I'm not a disposable guy. If I put on a watch and it lasts for 40 years, I'm wearing that same watch for 40 years. So it's same to be said for pocket knife, shotguns, waders, boots, decoys. I'm that guy. I want something. I don't mind paying a little bit less, but I want it to last forever.
Mm-hmm.
And my Quack Rack works as good right now as it did the day I put it on. Golly, dude, I wouldn't ask for anything better. It's way better than anything I've personally ever used. And I have no intention of getting rid of it. Putting that front rack on was a game changer. And I'm going to tell you right now, you know, because both my boys, we were all hunting together. You know, growing up, it was just my dog. Now it's their dog. So 3 of us getting a blind, there's 3 guys, 3 dogs, 3 guns.
Yep.
You know, but boy, you know, the way we've got it stacked and compartmentalized, you know, what goes on front, what goes on top, what goes on the sides, boom, we're just ready to roll. And it's just, it runs like a well-oiled machine for us. That system does. It really does fit good. But now I've got a great question for you. Right now, today, with this 2020 China flu going around, how does it feel to be American made? I mean, seriously, how does it feel to be an American made product? I did not know until the last 2-month education in Wuhan and everything else that 90% of American Tylenol supply was made in China. How does it feel to be American made?
You know, that term, made in the USA, and being made in America changed for me dramatically in my second year of Quack Rack. I thought I knew what that term meant. And then I learned what that term meant. And it chokes me up every time I tell it, but the manufacturer, when the oil and gas business was down, the guy that would never have taken me in, took me in to save his business. And, you know, it's easy right now to say, man, you're silly not to be made in America. And there's a whole bigger macro level that we could probably do a 2-part series in. But on a micro level, my guy's named Jerry. In my second year, Jerry came to me and he said, I cannot thank you enough for your business, but you just saved Christmas for everybody on my team. And that right there absolutely defined what being made in the USA is. And my pride started out, you asked me, why did I start the business? Why did I keep going? Well, my pride started out as helping waterfowl hunters. And my pride over time has shifted. I love putting these guys to work. I love when I put in a large PO and you can see it in their eyes. And I love being able to have those guys be in business, stay in business, and depend on me. You know, right now, over the past couple of years, I've moved all of our operations to Northwest Arkansas. And my fabricator up there, beginning of the year, first week of January, I set up a meeting. And I go into this big conference room and he comes in here and he sits down and we have a cup of coffee. And I looked him in the eye and I just said, man, I can't thank you enough at how well everything is going and how well everything is operating. And, you know, he doesn't know that I saw this, but his shoulders dropped by about 2 inches. They sagged. He was stressed. He didn't know what I was going to tell him, but I told him that I'm enjoying the relationship. I appreciate our business. And he knew that he was going to continue making Quack Racks. And that right there, knowing that his family, his company is dependent upon a little old silly company named Quack Rack out of Texas with some goofy thing. These guys don't even know what decoys are. They're just badass welders. They're building this stuff, and that's what makes me proud. It's not like, oh, COVID-19, I told you so. But I'll, let me give you the flip side of that. You're talking about Tylenol and all this other stuff, and you know, we got to put our money where our mouth is as Republicans, Democrats, whatever, as pro-America. You know, I would say that most of the audience here is anti-socialism. Most of the audience here is probably pro-Trump or pro-Republican. Best way to put it is probably pro-capitalism. But when it comes to the way that people, you see them on the outside, pro-capitalism, but when they spend their dollar, what are they doing? They can't wait to find a deal. They can't wait to find a China-made product and buy it. And
because honestly, you know, it's not a political statement in doing that. It's just we've been cultivated to buy low. Yeah. I mean, we've been, you know, we've been taught spend less. You know, because I'm sitting here as you're talking, my head's swimming because, you know, what you just said. I mean, I grew up, man, my grandparents, that generation, American made, buy American, you know, that whole thing. But boy, a lot has changed since then. I mean, the whole global supply chain. Well, we've got a mutual friend, Garrett. He works for Academy, the big shot up in there, but he used to be in the food industry. And we were down in Argentina duck hunting a few years ago, and he was explaining to me, this is globalism. He was explaining to me that you go to your local grocery store and you buy a wild salmon fillet, fresh, wild-caught salmon fillet, boom, sitting right there on ice at Kroger. He said, let me tell you how fresh it is. It was caught in Alaska, loaded into boats on ice, shipped to China, processed, and then shipped to a port and then put on a refrigerated truck and distributed. It's 14 days old, sitting right there, as fresh as it can be because of the global supply. I said, well, why don't they just? He said, because you wouldn't pay 5 times what that salmon fillet costs if it didn't go to China and get processed so cheaply. And so, I mean, when you start blowing that up, but, you know, Quack Rack, since I've known you, we've had these discussions. Man, why don't you just send it to China and make a lot more money? And because, you know, even though it's not American made, it's an American company. And I just ignorantly had thought, well, that's good enough. It's an American company.
You know, that's when I travel around and go to different duck camps, Ramsey, that's, you know, there'll be other guests there, and that's what the first thing people always tell me is you're an idiot if you don't go to China. But that's not what my company's about. Mm-hmm. My company is not about that shortcut. My company is, and the pride that we have is to build a quality product, to build a product that makes your life easier, makes your duck hunting more efficient and more successful, supporting your fellow American. And it's a hard thing to say, well, everybody's been taught to buy at the lower price, or people wouldn't pay the $5. Well, maybe times like this, you start to question, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't need to give an economics lesson for people to realize that if money never left the country, we'd all be making more of it. And wages would be prices would drive up, wages would drive up, but it would still be the same ratio or correlation. And, you know, the unfortunate thing is every Excel spreadsheet accountant for every business and CFO, everybody's always asking the question, how can we save money? How can we make it cheaper? Where can we cut costs? And I want nothing to do with that. I really don't. I want to make a quality product. I want to make your life easier, and I want it to last the rest of your life. And maybe that's going to put me out of business, but I would rather go out of business sticking to my core fundamentals the way that I want to run it than I would cutting those corners. And
I know it can be a harder road to hoe just from having talked to people that utilize, you know, not all materials are going to come from America, but it's made in America. It puts America in a job. In fact, Brandon Shariki with Ball Shot Shells was speaking to the same thing a few weeks ago. You know, he grew up in Michigan. The whole just real made America great, blue collar America workers, just like your guys in the shop that are turning this stuff out. And man, he gets to speak to him about employing Americans. Boy, he can write textbook on it. I mean, he's savvy about it, same as you are. But what as it affects you, Garrett? Are there any benefits or disadvantages that you see? I mean, 'cause it's got to be it's the hard way, you keep saying. So, what are some of the benefits or disadvantages of making Quack Rack in America?
Well, it all boils down to labor prices. You know, one part of the story that I never really tell is during years 1, 2, and 3 of Quack Rack, the prices of aluminum skyrocketed. And I've never raised my prices. I've never done anything with it. But, you know, a sheet of aluminum used to be $140, and it got over $300 just for a sheet of aluminum in my first 3 years of running this business. And, you know, I can look at Chinese aluminum, and I could probably save, you know, roughly right now, probably almost $100 a sheet for just a sheet of aluminum if I wanted to. If you look at labor, you know, it's a big difference. But I also hear the other side of the story right now, and that is when I talk to other owners of Chinese manufactured products, you know, one of the biggest companies in the industry, I'm not going to say the name, 45 days ago didn't even know if they were going to get their product in. And right now they're able to get 75 to 80% in. There's a little bit of a hiccup. Another company, I was talking to a guy this week, and tariffs are as high as 20 to 35% just to get product here. And, you know, so yes, I could knock out labor bills, you know, the labor and the process and the cost of going into manufacturing would be so much less expensive, but I'm not going to do it. Absolutely not going to do it.
Amen. Changing gears a little bit, you and I have had some conversations over the years in a duck blind and over cold drinks talking about this, but social media marketing, y'all have got a really incredible page, I think. I keep up with you there on Instagram, and y'all really make that machine and that setup look so sexy with those stingray lights going and everything else. It's a good deal. But man, based on your background and some of the things we've been talking about, I'm just curious. I've been doing a lot of thinking. You know, I love social media. It's a great platform. It's very transparent. It's a very good way, instead of like a business card styled website or even print ads or even magazine stories. You know, the great thing about social media is it forms a real good, transparent connection between the consumer and the business. But because you're evolving, you're telling stories, you're showing different things, different conditions, different days, good days, bad days, and you know, people that channel into a brand or a company or a person via social media, they know a lot more about you than just a 20-minute phone call or a 1,500-word story. It's a real good evolving story, like a series. And, you know, it's so powerful in the world of marketing today. I'm aware of a lot of, quote, mega brands, the premium products like yourself, like many others. But I'm aware that a lot of them have transitioned almost all or most of their marketing into these influencer type marketing, social media things. But here lately, the last couple of months, this great big COVID pause, I'm sitting at home thinking to myself, my phone's ringing. Very, very certain demographic, the same demographic I would describe. It's 80% wagon pullers in my particular business. And I'm just curious on your input. You know, what I see is, you know, if I think back, Instagram, I was in my late 40s before I ever put the Instagram app on my phone. I didn't know what Instagram was. Heck, I was in my 40s before I knew what Facebook was. Back in the day, it was just what college kids use on college campuses. And times evolve and things grow, and a lot of people are plugged into it. But just, what are your thoughts on, like, you know, the average age of an Instagram user versus who this COVID pause, this break in income for a month or two is offset by federal dollars, but still this break in lifestyle and income, and if not just this COVID, but future recessions. I'm 50. I've been through 4 of these things now. And it happens. Economy don't just always grow. You've got contractions. And versus what's your thoughts would be on, you know, the average age versus what demographic such a recession is like to affect versus the how this whole influencer marketing that's become so proliferate now will affect the sales of premium products. Have you got any thought? I mean, what are your thoughts? My head swims when I think about this kind of stuff.
Well, it's the moment I get social media figured out, by the time I figure it out, it changes. And it seems like we're kind of always chasing it, and it wasn't what it was 4 or 5 years ago. You know, to get 10,000 followers in 6 months wasn't a thing a couple of years ago, and now the algorithms change, and I've heard a lot of people that consult with me through social media saying that the days of gathering a bunch of new followers, you're pretty much somewhat locked into where you are, and it's going to be slow incremental growth. You know, seeing people with 50, 75, 100, 150,000 followers in the waterfowl world, none of us are growing our community or our follower base like we used to, for whatever reason. You've got different avenues, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok is is more prevalent, and people are talking about that now. But for me, Ramsey, through this COVID-19 or through these times, or even when it's good, I have to understand who my customer is, and then I have to choose. And so for me at Quack Rack, Instagram has been the number one driver to my website. Facebook is like 5 or 6, but we probably, 6 months ago, I would have told you Instagram's like everybody's high five and great picture, way to go. And Facebook, when you got a message, it was a sale. It was a done deal. People were more serious. It's more of an adult crowd. But, that's always evolving and changing, and it always will evolve and change. But I don't think you or me would be in the position that we're in today without these avenues, good or bad, without them changing, without them doing it. And so, are people spending more time on social media right now? I think they are. I was talking with another company that just launched some decoys, and when we were running a story the other night, and the story didn't do well at all on my end. Normally when I run a story in 24 hours, you'll have 5, 6, 7,000 views, and I had like 1,200. And I think some of these states are unlocking. People are tired of the social media, and I think a lot of people were out to dinner that night or whatever,
Yeah.
But we just have to. It's always evolving. It's always changing. But like I said, Instagram is our number one tool, and I think it would be wise for all of us, for you, to go open a TikTok account and just start looking, just start learning. Because like you said, you weren't 40, when you started Instagram, you were probably behind the curve. Well, the best advice that we can do is what's next? And we're watching that younger generation on the TikTok. We're seeing, I guess you could say, Facebook is just kind of Facebook. It's not that exciting as like a TikTok or an Instagram. But it's always going to be changing, and so we just got to keep up. What you have a line about the money you spend in marketing, right? 50% works, 50% doesn't, and you spend 100% of your time figuring out what 50%.
Yeah, 50% right.
Works.
That's right. I do wonder sometimes, because I spend a lot of time on Instagram looking and absorbing and exploring. But also, people have said, well, why don't you write a book? Man, you ought to write a book. I'm like, I do write a book. Just go look at my Instagram time feed, and you read a paragraph at a time. I do it for personal enjoyment, but I also recognize I never, ever, ever, ever will forget the time. I was at a show in Dallas, and a young man came into my booth and started asking about my dog and asking about my kids and asking about just personal stuff. And I'm sitting there thinking the whole time we're talking, he's a young man, half my age or my kid's age, and I wonder, who is this guy? And I said, maybe he's one of my maybe he's forest friend or somebody's son or something. I said, man, I'm sorry, I don't know you. And man, his face dropped and he goes, we're friends on Facebook. Well, man, when you got 5,000 friends on Facebook, it's kind of hard to keep up with every single person. But that it really sent home the message that, wow, this is a great way for people to know you. It's transparent. It's letting them into not just your business, but into your person. And that's a good thing. I think it's a very good thing because, as I find myself building relationships with people now, professional otherwise, I can learn a lot about them by looking at their social media feed. But I did wonder if you had any thoughts on how we're all trying to figure it out, but it seems to me to be very demographic oriented and age oriented, and you can think about demographics in terms of how old somebody is and their background and where they're from, but you can also look at them in terms of consumers for this category of product or this category of product or this category of product. And I just wonder, man, where I am at age 50 versus where I was at age 20, there's a big difference, So it's just a real big difference. And I wonder if this is going to change. It's not going to change the way that I reach people or let people into the Get Ducks lifestyle, but I just wonder if you could see or thought about a way that it might change the way
there's a lot of things
market.
There's a lot of things we can't control, and there's a lot of things that we can control. And we have a metric on our website. And I told you a second ago that Instagram is the number one driver to our website. But the number one comment of how did you hear about us through my sales of last year was word of mouth.
Mm-hmm. Same here.
And so, I'm doing the best job that I can, and I'm learning. I'm 41 years old, and I feel old as it relates to knowing what the hell's going on with social media. And I've got all these 20-somethings telling me, oh, you should do this, you should do that, you should frame your picture, you should blah, blah, blah. I'm always going to be trying to keep up with that. But the one thing that I can control, and I love seeing, is when your number one, how did you hear about us, is.
You still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. You broke up. Your number one way of hearing about you is
word of mouth.
Word of mouth. Yep. Well, where next for Quack Rack? Where next? Where do you go from here, Garrett?
We've got a lot. I say a lot. We've got some core products that we're launching this year. We've one of the things that we build that nobody really knows about is UTV roofs, and so roofs have become bigger and bigger, and we've refined it. We've made them better, and we've got some new products that we're going to launch in the next 30 days. Tools that are not UTV oriented, tools that any waterfowler can use, and so we're enhancing our UTV lines, but at the same time we're kind of stepping away and getting into more products that the average duck hunter can acquire and use to help them make it more successful. But, we're going to continue to be American made. I'm going to continue to over-engineer. And we're, like I said, this week I'm seeing the shift, and we're already moving towards planning and trying to figure out where are we going to go this year for duck season. And I hope you and I can cross paths again. And so we're planning all that out, trying to figure out where we want to go.
I just fixing to say, you sent me a meme last night of the dude. He's so over the COVID-19 and killer hornets, murder hornets, whatever they're calling those bugs, and he's just ready to go shoot some ducks, man, and I am too. Where are we going to go next, Garrett? That's the big question. Where are we going to go shoot something?
Man, I'm ready to go anywhere. The guys are always chomping the bit to get back to Idaho and Montana, and we're talking a lot about Nebraska and Kansas this year. Maybe doing a couple flooded timber hunts over in Arkansas. I hadn't hunted in Arkansas in a couple of years, but who knows? The good news is I think we're moving forward and states are opening up, and I think the fear of having any sort of interference with waterfowl season has kind of gone out the window.
Yeah. And that's the big thing. It really was. I know a lot of people that have been personally hurt, and it was very, very scary. And it is a little scary. Even as these things are opening up, we don't know. There's a lot of unknown out here, but I do feel better myself. I feel better. I'm not fearful. I feel better. I want to see it open up. I want to see everybody get back. Everybody I know just wants to work. I'm ready to see it go back to work. That's what America was built on, was work.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody I know just wants to work.
Mm-hmm.
Garrett, how can tell listeners how they can connect with you? How can everybody get connected with Quack Rack, Garrett Walker?
In several ways. I'd ask that you follow us on social media. We've got a Facebook and we've got Instagram, and it's just as simple as Quack Rack. Our website is www.quackrack.com, and we welcome any phone calls to help get you rigged up for this waterfowl season. One of the things that we're doing right now is we opened up a performance shop, and guys are bringing their buggies. Right now we've got 6 or 7 buggies in the shop, and guys are getting outfitted with racks and getting new tires, whatever it is. We're just getting you ready for waterfowl season. So we'd love to hear from you. We follow up with all the questions that get asked on all Facebook, Instagram, and the website. So reach out and give us a shout, quackrack.com.
Absolutely. Folks, thank y'all for listening. Subscribe to Duck Season somewhere, anywhere you listen to podcasts. Thanks for telling others to listen to. Hit me up, Ramsey Russell Get Ducks, with comments or suggestions. Until next time, remember, life's short. Get ducks.
Duck Season Somewhere is produced by Ben Page. Original soundtrack by our friend Cody Huggins.